Today's speaker is Dr. Ning Zhang, and he leads the Computer Security and Privacy Laboratory at Washington University in St. Louis. And previously, he also worked at Raytheon. And today's talk is about security and privacy in the cyber physical world, including IoT devices and embedded systems.
All right, thanks, Antonio, for the introduction. So the topic that I'm going to talk about today is security and privacy in the cyber physical world. My very biased vision of the future is that we are embracing a brave new cyber physical world where everything is interconnected and the cyber world and physical world is closely intertwined together. We are already witnessing a whole bunch of life-changing cyber physical systems, from voice assistant to AR goggles that can translate languages in real time, to 3D printed organs that has been used to save lives. However, we have also witnessed how vulnerabilities in these systems can undermine the safety and security of its users. So my best vision of security and privacy in the cyber physical world, in other words, the vision for our lab is threefold. From the system security fronts, which is my background, we are more concerned on the security and privacy, security and safety in the presence of cyber attacks. Some of the research topics that we work on are CPS availability, real-time system security, resilience, software protection in real-time CPS, medical device, trusted execution environments. Moving up the stack a little bit, AI, I believe, is changing many sectors in the society nowadays. And we are also interested in AI security because it's sitting on top of the system, looking at the software and algorithm aspects. So in this domain, we work on physical world realizable adversarial example, semantic preserving adversarial example, and malware. And on the privacy fronts, we are interested in both the cyber privacy and physical privacy in the emerging new settings. So I'm going to talk about our work on spy camera detection. So I'm going to start the presentation with the research thrust on security and safety in the presence of cyber attack. So in this line of work, we make the assumption that attacker can actually find vulnerabilities and compromise our system. And we think about ways to, bring the line of defense in such that we can remain safe even in the presence of cyber attacks. So the first one I will talk about, from all of the work that I will talk about in this talk, I'll only give the brief introduction, except the first work, I'll go into the detail. For the first work, the research question is, how do we secure the emerging safety critical cyber physical systems? Even when the attacker can compromise the kernel, can we maintain minimum control such that, for example, the drone taxi can land safely and people can get out? I'm going to play this introduction video.
A defining characteristic of real-time cyber-physical systems is their continuous interaction with the physical world. For safety functions like pedestrian detection, computation resources have to be available in a timely manner. Sensing, control, and actuation forms a control loop. Availability for CPS implies timely access to computation for control and timely access to I/O for sensing and actuation.
In this paper, we present the design of a real-time trusted execution environment to ensure system availability. In order to minimize the TCB, we leverage the observation that control programs in CPS are predictable by design. Our system trades off rich functionalities for minimal yet secure implementation using hierarchical scheduling and I/O driver debloating. If you are interested in our work, please join us at S&P.
So that's the introduction. As a matter of fact, please ask me questions and make this interactive as much as possible. Otherwise, I will be reading through my slides for 40 minutes, and it's not very fun. So one of the things that when you think about, hey, I got a normal world compromise, or I have a compromised OS, the first thing you probably think about to defend against this type of attack is trusted execution environment. Particularly because we're working on embedded device, so it would be ARM Trust Zone. So ARM Trust Zone provides a hardware-assisted strong isolation between normal world and secure world. However, in existing deployment of TEEs, most of the time we shift all the scheduling and IO to normal world for simplicity in secure world, right? We're making this cautious trade-off choice because most of the scheduling, IO management, and resource management are complex. So we're shifting all of them to normal world. But for availability, it's very important that we have a trustworthy resource scheduling algorithm. Why is availability important in cyber physical systems? Because CPS, particularly safety critical CPS, they have continuous interaction with the physical world. In order for them to function correctly, they need to perform sensing, control, and actuation in a timely manner. For example, if we don't stop the vehicle in time when we detect a pedestrian, then it might be too late by the time the car stops. And lastly, there are very bad or severe physical or kinetic consequences for missing computation deadlines in cyber physical systems. Therefore, that's why in this particular work, we choose to focus on ensuring availability in cyber physical systems. To further motivate why real-time availability is important, we developed an attack called the time warping attack, where we exploit the dynamic frequency voltage scaling DVS features in CPU to sort of slow down the processor, but still let it run. The moment we launch the attack, you can see the trajectory on the bottom left of the figure start going out of the baseline. And on the right, you can see the absolute error in the pulse just skyrocketed. And that would lead to crashing of the vehicle. So real-time availability in cyber physical systems actually implies two types of availability protections. The first one is real-time computation availability. That is for the control algorithm to run. Once you sense something, you want to perform computation on the sense physical state so that you know how to control the actuator. The second part is real-time IO availability for sensing and actuation. So basically, we want to be able to sense correctly and actuate the controls, the physical control of the robotic vehicle securely and timely. Our threat model is we assume arbitrary code execution in normal world. We aim to use denial of service attacks to destabilize the cyber physical system. And we assume the attacker can deny access to a processor, deny access to IO, in other words, deny all the access to sensor and actuators, and disable peripherals, for example, disable the timer and power. And attacks that we do not consider are hardware and sensor attacks, side channel attacks. So from RTTE system overview, there are three main parts, three main research questions that we have to answer. The first one is, what is the minimum set of hardware primitive for availability? That is for bootstrapping availability using resource isolation and secure timer. The second research question is, how do we ensure CPU availability with small TCB? One of the easiest things to ensure real-time availability is re-implement the entire scheduling system inside the secure domain, but that's going to blow up the TCB. And the last research question that we have to answer is, how do we ensure real-time IO availability with a small TCB? Because directly migrating the driver into the secure world would also increase the TCB significantly. So to answer the first research question, we look at the basic requirements of cyber-physical system or real-time cyber-physical systems. And we find out that there are basically two things that you need in order to ensure that you have secure and timely execution of safety critical workloads. The first one is a secure timer. Using the secure timer, you can trap the execution from untrusted normal world back to secure world. In other words, you can get back your execution rates. The second one is resource isolation, because you want to be able to insert yourself into all the access control to mitigate all the access control as an IO reference pointer. That would allow you to perform fine-grained resource management. So these are the two key requirements. So tag on to the secure timer, you also need to have access to physical passage of time. The reason why we require that is because passage of time is interesting in computer. The computer doesn't really have a concept of physical world time, right? It goes by clock tick. So you also need the physical passage of time, but that's part of the secure timer. So given those two primitives, how do we ensure real-time CPU availability without significantly increasing the TCB? If you look at existing scheduling paradigm, all the scheduling is done by the normal world. Naive implementation is to move the complex Linux scheduler to the secure world. However, if we do that, then secure world would not only need to know its own scheduling context, but also all the complex task structures inside the normal world kernel. And that would significantly increase the complexity of the secure world. Within this hierarchical scheduling framework, then we can decouple the real-time responsiveness from the complexity of the scheduler design. So hierarchical scheduling is a common way to perform compositional scheduling within real-time computing. And we are leveraging this real-time computing tool to enable this decoupling. There are two levels of CPU scheduler. At the word scheduler level, you have the sole purpose of that scheduler is to decide whether to run the non-secure world or to run the secure world, right? And once you decide, you hand the execution right to either the secure scheduler or the non-secure scheduler. This way, the word scheduler only needs to know very basic information about which word to direct the control to, and that's it. However, it's actually not that easy. There are, if you look at it, there are many challenges in terms of not having multiple physical timer, interrupts. We have a lot more detail in terms of designing this policy-based and event-based optimization in the paper. But from a very high level, at design time, we need to fit the task execution model, such as, is it periodic task? Is it sporadic task? The scheduling algorithm, is it rate monotonic? Into this compositional scheduling analysis. Using the compositional scheduling analysis, you get the word policy, which is get fed into the word scheduler, and the individual's OS scheduler can handle their own OS time once they got the piece of the slice of computation CPU to execute on. How do we ensure the real-time I/O availability without significantly increasing TCB? That's the third research challenge. Within the I/O availability, there are actually multiple smaller challenges. For example, like I said in the very beginning, if you just migrate all the driver from normal world to secure world, then you could potentially increase the TCB significantly. If you can, the current I/O isolation for TE is bus level, such as I2C bus. So we don't really have lower than bus level isolation, hardware enforced isolation that's provided by trust zone. The real-time property on I/O is hard to guarantee when you don't consider the real-time performance and priority inversions. Because we're limited to 40 minutes, so I will only go through how we solved the first one and give brief highlight about how we solved the rest. In order to solve the first challenge, we leverage the observation that if you look at the CPS sensing and actuation, it's actually very predictable. So predictable means it always sends the same thing over the serial bus. So we templatize that entire interaction. That way we can significantly reduce the TCB. And but once you templatize that you're trading off the expressiveness of the driver with a smaller TCB. But how do you maintain what happens if we need complex features of driver? So one of the ways that we did that is through a splitted kernel driver, which is a sandbox to prevent it from compromising the secure OS. We also implemented the spatial temporal IO reference monitor to ensure that you cannot damage the motor or you cannot do priority inversions. To evaluate, we built our own drone using Raspberry Pi 3 as the control processing board and Navio 2 board as the daughter board that would connect to all the controls. We also done this on Cortex-M using NXP LPC 55S69. And we have both physical world experiments and software in the loop experiments. So we benchmark them and look at how they perform in the real world. And we find that RTTE actually has minimum control impact. We also look at all the real-time tasks, and we find out that the real-time tasks have, none of them exceed the deadline either when they are protected by RTTE. Now, that is the end of RTTE work. So after finishing RTTE work, because we did the time warping attack, so we have noticed that your trust zone is not bulletproof. Once you are able to slow down its processing, things go strange or it will crush the system. So we asked ourselves, like, can we use TAM as an attack vector? So we did a work where we look at what happens if we try to mess up the timing of your control systems. It turns out that we analyzed many SLAM algorithms. SLAM is for localization. We analyzed many of the SLAM algorithms, and we'll find out that using timing attack is actually possible to crush them. And if you look at the open loop testing on the top right, you will find that when it's under attack, the path deviates significantly from the baseline. And in closed loop, of course, things are much worse because it's closed loop testing. Therefore, you see the impact after each frame, it accumulates. So I got a question. What exactly are the secure and non-secure world? Are they separate OS? Thanks for the question. So in ARM Trust Zone, let me roll back quite a bit. So in ARM Trust Zone, the terminology is that regular OS is, or rich OS, the OS with tons of functionality runs on the non-secure states. And your secure OS, which does just very limited stuff such as fingerprinting authentication, runs on the secure. So you can understand it as two OS running on the same hardware. Hopefully that answers your questions. Okay. So the next thing we look at is, can we use timing as an attack vector? And we analyze SLAM and find out we can. That's good news for attacker, but bad news for defender. But in that attack, we actually need to do many manual tuning and manual investigation and profiling of the system in order to launch the attack. So we immediately turn to, we are computer scientists, so can we automate these attacks? So in our recent RTSS work, we look at, is it possible to automate the resource contention-based timing attack? There are 3 separate research challenges. The first one is, what are the complete set of resource contention channels, right? In our CCS work, we basically look at cache, but there are file system-based, there are network-based, and how do we automatically tune the primitive of each the parameters of each primitive? And the last one is, how do we adaptively select the combination of different channels, both spatially, in other words, in one time slice, which channel we're going to use, and temporally, in other words, for each of the time slice, how should you vary between the channels? You don't lock into one channel, right, to maximize the attack impact. So by description, you can probably tell it's a very large search space. So we start tackling this challenge by serving existing work to look at what are the performance contention channels, right? Interestingly, it's actually very closely related to side channels. So we get quite a bit of inspiration from there. And then we develop a free-phase template attack, also inspired by cache template attack. So the free phase basically tackles each of the challenge stage. In the first phase, we use genetic algorithm to automatically find the right parameter for each of the primitive. And in the second phase, we basically look at our target that we want to cause performance interference on, and ask, let's search for which primitives is most effective. And for the last one, we use reinforcement learning to learn the time series of what primitive we should use at each stage. The yellow bar is our attack. As you can see, it's significantly better than just blankly writing memory. So on the left are benchmark attacks. Disparity, MSIR, and SVM are Cortex-M testing suites. And on the right, we actually the figure shows our attack on an actual localization algorithm. You can see our attack using the IO model, which is the brown tilted slash. We're able to cause deadline misses. Let me see. In iteration 2000 and 2500. Now, with the automatic attack, under the previous work, we showed that it's possible to automate this attack. Then we asked the question, can we defend against this? No, if we cannot defend against, at least we should be able to mitigate this, right? And this work appeared in IROS this year. My student was actually just presented this yesterday in Kyoto. On the picture, you can see 4 trajectories. Top left is without, no resource constraint. There's no timing anomaly. Top right and bottom left are the resource constraint platforms. In other words, there are resource contention due to platform resource, limited platform resources. And you can see the trajectory is all out of whack. And using our mitigation on the bottom right, you can see all the trajectories remain somewhat aligned with the baseline. Now, in order to go into how we were able to design this mitigation step, we need to understand that in SLAM algorithm, there's a front end and back end. And through our analysis, we find out that most of the attack was successful because it was desynchronizing front end and back end. So our mitigation on the timing attack is we perform online adaptation, where the online adaptation basically specifically pick samples that are temporally aligned with each other. But then how do you know how many to pick? So we use an AI model to predict what is our timing budget and how much we are delaying. And the outcome, as you can see at the 1,000 millisecond tick, 100 millisecond tick time point, we start launching the attack. You can see on the bottom left, the purple one, purple line is the response time without our mitigation, and the green line is with. And ours performs significantly better. And on the bottom right, you can see the diagram where it shows that using our mitigation step, we're able to mitigate the timing attack, or at least timing anomaly. So with that, I just went through our research on system security of cyber-physical systems. I'm going to pause here and take any questions if there's any. Okay, so I have about 40 minutes left. I would just talk about one work in our emerging, in our privacy line of work. This one is in this year's CCS, and we are developing a usable spy camera detector. So spy camera actually has been a real world physical privacy threat. As you can see from all the news, and Airbnb was equipped with many spy cameras. So we asked ourselves, what does spy camera look like? So we went out and purchased every single spy camera on Amazon. This is the collection, as you can see. So some of the spy cameras, they are disguised as electronics. Some of them are disguised as photo frames. Keep this in mind because it's important for our solution. Existing approach generally use either RF. So for many of the spy cameras, because they are Wi-Fi enabled spy cameras, so of course, if you move around, Wi-Fi actually transmits packet because it detected moving stuff, and the video stream compression changes, right? So that would allow you to correlate the event. But then this is great, but what happens to some of the spy cameras that doesn't transmit? In our market survey where we purchased all the spy cameras, we found that many of them actually doesn't transmit, about 40% if I recall correctly. The other approach is using a red light to flicker around, and hopefully the camera lens will reflect back the light to you, so you can see a flashing dot. So this also works great, but sometimes you need to know where to look at, because the reflection is works very well when you're directly against it, but when you're like at a tilted angle, it's a lot more difficult to spot. So you need to have the expertise. Then we'll come up with a way to say, geez, I mean, a photo frame shouldn't have heat on, right? What's going on? So we said, let's use thermal emissions. So as you can see from the picture, not only does those photo frames that are not supposed to heat up, but also if you look at things that is supposed to heat up, it's actually much hotter because it's it needs to process all the video and save them in SD cards. And one of the interesting things that we teach the machine learning algorithm to learn is that if you think about the packaging of the plug, right? In order to be stealthy, you need to keep the original external packages, right? But you need to fit extra electronic component inside that changes the heat dissipation of the case. So if you look at the case, the heat dissipation pattern, you will find that spy cameras is quite unique. So in order to, because not everybody knows what those patterns looks like. So in order to make this particular tool more usable by the general public, and we develop a neural network to try to recognize those patterns, because AI is very good at recognizing patterns. And because it's a data-driven approach, we actually collected large amount of photos. We are making this repository available for the community. So please contact us and make use of the data sets. Now, So besides privacy, we're also interested in looking at the algorithm level vulnerabilities of the cyber physical world. So I'll highlight two work that we've done here. One is physical realizable adversarial example, audio examples, and then semantic preserving audio examples. In this paper called When Evil Calls Targeted Adversarial Voice over IP, we're asking the research question of how does new connectivity in the physical world impact the IoT system security? Particularly, COVID-19 has reshaped our life forever. Like it or not, right now we are very used to Zoom. I'm delivering a talk via Zoom. I can, 3 years ago, I wouldn't think this is possible. I wouldn't think this is norm, but now it is. So, adversarial audio samples has been around for quite a bit. So, our group was asking, oh, geez, is it possible to deliver adversarial audio through Zoom? Then you sort of have this teleport system that can deliver adversarial audios. You don't need to be right next to it anymore. It turns out that yes, it's possible because we were able to do it. But on the other hand, it's actually much harder because for all the voice over IP solutions, you actually need to go through a whole bunch of processings, including encoding, decoding, transmissions, sometimes packet job. And in order to optimize the performance, many of the voice over IP solutions actually decided to filter out the frequencies that is not important for human to hear. But it's actually very important for our adversarial examples because we inject in places that can maximize the deviation probability once it reaches the decision boundary, right? And we also find out there's a whole bunch of noise that we weren't expecting because it's supposed to be completely digital. Turns out that there are many noises in the encoding and decoding process and also the entire pipeline. So we did a whole bunch of reverse engineering to understand them. And we designed a query-based system to come up with adversarial examples. We've performed a tag on 4 of the popular voice assistants, including Amazon Echo, over all types of video conferencing software. Generally for over the line tag, we only need only 100 and 500 queries, so that's quite fast. We are able to also demonstrate it's possible to perform over the air attack without getting highlighted, because one of the things in Zoom is that when you talk, Zoom highlight you. But if I'm the attacker, I really don't want you to highlight me because I'm sending the attack, right? I don't want to get attributed. So we look at it's possible to hide just below the speaker volume and play baby crying or play the car driving by or play the sirens. So the website is right there. If you're interested, please go onto the website. You can hear some of our adversarial examples. There's a baby crying that embeds malicious command. Now, lastly, you're probably going to be asking a question of, geez, now you can, of course, you can deliver adversarial audios, but how about voice authentication? And also, car horn is pretty obvious. Then we asked ourselves, can we do better in terms of making ourselves more stealthy? And the solution we come up with is semantic meaningful adversarial audio attack. So in this particular work, it just got accepted to using security 2023, and we aim to use semantic adversarial audio to attack the ASR and SR, the transcription system and the speaker recognition system. So different than previous work a little bit, instead of traditional LP based, so you just inject voice into the entire spectrum, we do semantic perturbation. So you're probably asking, what is semantic perturbation, right? So in this particular case, we look at prosody, and prosody is a semantic feature. So it's something like, are you angry? How fast are you talking? Do you have accent and things like that? I'm going to have an audio sample that you can listen to in a bit. And I just want to show this diagram because I want to show you in order to change a tune from anger to happy, you actually need to change a whole bunch of things across the temporal spec. It's not just 1 point or 2 points, and that's what makes it hard. So we come up with a generative method to combine the original audio and the porosity manipulation vector to create this type of porosity natural semantic meaningful adversarial examples. And I just want to show quickly what does it look like. So to human, it's supposed to listen as wipe the floor, but machine, it says it's open the door.
Wipe the floor.
We'll play again.
Wipe the floor.
And this is also wipe the floor, but it says I want to share.
Wipe the floor. Wipe the floor.
Right, so it shows like tune changes. I mean, to human, it sounds almost exactly the same, except my tone is different, my mood is different, but to machine, it's quite different. And lastly, I just want to highlight our ongoing work called OPCPS, Open Platform for Cyber Physical System Security Research. Within this, so at WashU, we have a whole bunch of cyber physical systems that we build ourselves. We work with hospitals, and we're trying to aggregate all the cyber, because one of the key challenge of cyber physical system research is lack of system to the physical thing. And we want to be able to allow remote access into this physical system so that we can conduct system research on top of it. If you're interested, please talk to me. I'm trying to get this started, but again, it doesn't have to be my thing. It should be our thing. And lastly, I sincerely want to thank all my students. These are brilliant work of my students. Without them, none of this would be possible. And I also like to thank all the funding agencies, including NSF, DHS, Army Research Office, and DOE, and lastly, WashU for supporting me. Thank you so much, and I'm going to take questions.
All right. So my question is, in your first work, so you mentioned that you have the kind of word scheduler, right? So on top of the normal and the secure word, right? So this scheduler, I mean, is supposed to be protected.
Yes, the word scheduler is in the secure word, so it's within the trusted computing base. It's assumed to be secure.
Okay.
And if the word scheduler is broken, then there's no security guarantee.
Okay, so it's in secure word.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Anything on the right is on secure word, so including the secure word OS scheduler. Yeah. We implement our own secure OS scheduler. It's fairly simple, but clearly the more complex you go with the scheduling algorithm in the secure word, the more complex the TCP is. Yeah.
Another question that I'm just curious. So you mentioned this spy camera, right? So, and also you show the picture that there's a lamp.
Yep.
And looks like the camera is right on the
right in the middle. Yes. Right.
So if you're trying to detect the heat, do you think that's going to be difficult? Because it's supposed to be heat.
Yeah. That's a very good question. In adverse environment where it was generating a lot of heat, heat itself should not be the only determination. So that's why we use the neural network to train it to recognize patterns. So, but if you see a light bulb that's not evenly heated, and on the side it's heated, and then in the middle there's a ring that is cold, and then in center again there's another heated spot, then it's not a normal light bulb.
Okay, so
and the neural and the neural
network
network
means it's off. It's easier to detect, right?
Yeah, it's fairly easy for the neural network to detect. I mean, until people use those type of weird labels all around, then it's a different story.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I guess I lost that, but for the hidden camera detection.
Yeah.
So what's the equipment you need to use to do the detection? I
Very good
think I'm-
question. So
I'm-
we have the thermal camera plug-in into the phone. The thermal camera plug-in is about $200.
And you
uh,
can plug it in a normal phone?
Yeah,
interesting.
USB-C.
Interesting.
They have both the Android version and the iPhone version. I have both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see a lot of these things actually. So they use that thermal camera to check your, the temperature, the some leakage from your windows, your doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we were like, thermal is always there. It doesn't matter what angle you look at it. So we were like, let's use thermal. But then we really don't need to tune at the right angle, and we're actually still able to pick them up. I mean, there are definitely limitations. If you put them right next to the stove, I'm probably not going to happen.
Looks like we have a question here.
Uh-huh.
How were the malicious commands to the voice assistant developed? Were they made with machine learning?
Yes. So we have two work. The first one is query base. In query base, we basically use query. Using the query result, we estimate the gradient and we try to push the adversarial sample close to the boundary. Right. In the second example, we use a generative neural net to synthesize the voice with different types of tune and prosody. So yes, we did use ML to create those. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, but Professor Sheng, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming here, and we're so happy to have you here to visit us on campus. It was great.
Thank you. It's my
great
pleasure.
having you. Great.
Yeah,
Thanks a
beautiful
lot.
campus.
Thanks.